ships landed, whips chained and branded. 300 years of free labor. We ain't asking for no favor. Time to pay. Right now, time for reparations. Time for reparations. Right now, time for reparations. Pay up, time to pay up. Right now, reparations. Pay up, time to pay up. Right now, reparations. Reparations for reconstructions. Red summers of destruction. Segregation, Jim Crow corruption. Right now, time for reparations. Reparations for the Constitution. Said we were 3/5 human. Reparations are overdue. 40 acres and some new. Time for reparations. Time for reparations. Time for reparations. Time for reparations. Right now, time for reparations. Pay up, time to pay up. Right now, reparations. Pay up, time to pay up. Right now, reparations. Time for reparations. Time for reparations. Right now, time for reparations. Pay up, time to pay up. Right now, reparations. Pay up, time to pay up. Right now,
I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to Conversations with Al McFarlane. Glad to be here and glad to have you along. Thursday, we have a variety of topics, and I see that one of my colleagues is here. Brother Yusuf and Jeannie, how you doing, man?
Very good, brother. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good to see you. Others are going to join us. I wanted to take today, though, to sort of talk around the table and get the thoughts and feelings of what's on the mind of my partners in this call. So I'm going to start with you. What things are top of mind in your conversation, analysis of the news, consideration of community right now?
Well, there are a couple of issues, both of which are national and a couple that are local. The national issues relate to the absence of any action on the voting rights in Congress, eliminating voter suppression, creating national standards for the states to adhere to that will ensure maximum participation by voters from all walks of life. The other is the fact that, from a national perspective, the American Legislative Exchange Council, also known as ALEC, is submitting information to Republican state legislatures across the country. And they contend that any teaching or training in public education or government-funded facilities that involves race, slavery, or white privilege is somehow teaching white hatred and is therefore beneath the umbrella of critical race theory. And they are creating a backlash to the momentary wave of compassion that occurred after the murder of George Floyd, and believe that since Derek Chauvin was convicted, that Black people ought to be satisfied and there shouldn't be any other steps necessary, including reparation or apologies or attempts to make reform, meaningful reform in corrections and law enforcement and the K-12 to prison pipeline. So those are the national pieces. The attack on what they label critical race theory and the absence of any legislation dealing with voter registration and participation. Locally, we continue to see a wave of violence and murders in the Black community created by or facilitated by young Black males against one another, sometimes for even minor slights on social media. And the other is the secondary surge or wave of COVID-19 cases, particularly among those who are yet to obtain vaccination and among younger people, 12 and below. So there's some serious ripples running through our community and through the nation.
Kamal King, how you doing, man?
I'm doing fine. Sorry to be late.
Not
How
a problem.
you doing, yourself?
Good. Thank you, brother. Good to see you.
Thank you. Good to be seen.
Just starting off, Kamal, asking you and Youssef and others who'll be joining, top of mind things for you. What's kind of on your mind in the news world and social commentary world, observation about community? Any pressing ideas or things that you are arguing in community and among friends?
I'll pick up where Youssef left off with regard to the COVID-19. And what I'm finding is among 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds, that age group are refusing to get the vaccine. And I may have shared with you that I have two goddaughters, both of them in their mid-30s, and they had problems with getting the vaccine. And, it's the same, the arguments that they give are, it hadn't been tested, it's being rushed, the Tuskegee experiment, which really has no relevance to this vaccine. And I'm finding that not only my goddaughters, but the people in that age group, the 40s, 30s and 40s, and Black kids and intelligent kids. I'm saying they're intelligent because they're educated. They come from good families. They are hesitant to get the vaccine, in spite of the scientific data that I relied on to take it. So that's
what do you think? What do you think that is? I mean, young people generally have this sense of invincibility. I think we all go through that, but we grow out of it because we recognize that we are mortal the older we get. But I think the information, as you say, is so available. The science is so clear. It makes it difficult to believe that good thinking, right thinking people are embracing the hesitance and not doing the right thing. What do you think is driving that?
I believe that talk radio, especially right-wing talk radio, if they're listening to that, that's part of it. And then I think after a while, they become stubborn. I'm not taking it, and I don't care what you say, blah blah blah. You can't convince them. They are ignoring the science, and it's like you're trying to push someone to do something that they've said they're not going to do. And the more you push, the more they dig in.
Kamal, I ask them, are you willing to take the oxygen and the antibodies and the antibiotics when you get COVID-19? And if you're willing to do that, shouldn't you also be open-minded about taking the vaccine and eliminating the need for the oxygen and the antibodies and the antibiotics?
Right. Yeah, I tell them, if you don't like, a mask, and you think you're gonna get sick, you're really not gonna like being incubated. But that's been kind of like the top of mind. And then this, I've been kind of keeping up with this infrastructure bill, and it looks like it might get pushed through.
So two parts of that. One, 1.2 trillion is what the Senate passed over to the House. And it looks like there'll be some resistance, but ultimately it'll go. And it seems like it'll go because on the heels of it, Biden and the Senate have also recommended a larger $3.5 trillion investment which probably will find greater resistance, but it signals an intent by the administration to listen to the progressives in the House in particular who want massive investment. And they want that sort of in the face of and despite the resistance of obviously the Republicans, but also some of the centrist Democrats who question whether things can be done
Well, and
with
Ted
values that
Cruz,
are not bipartisan. Go ahead, Yusuf.
Ted Cruz derailed the issue in the Senate yesterday. Now they're on their recess.
Okay.
So we'll have to wait until September when they come back to begin the discussion again. And it's sad. You know?
Yeah, one of the things that bothered me about the bill is that a lot of the infrastructure they are putting in, they're saying it's going to be a private government-private partnership. So, you may get new roads, but they may be toll roads. Like what's happening here in Georgia, instead of going to public transportation, high-speed trains, they're building lanes on the existing highways,
Sure.
and then charging you to use those lanes.
Yeah.
So if the infrastructure bill comes, loaded with toll roads, it's you think you get something, you get something on one hand and they take it on the left.
Well, we have the same high HOV lanes,
High occupancy vehicle lanes
here in Minnesota. And I remember Kamal driving in Atlanta with a rental car, and this is when you not being really understanding what it meant to be in the lane or not. And nothing stopped me from being in the lane, but apparently there's photographs of cameras, right? And I turned my car in, and a month or so later, I got a ticket, right, that I had to pay. So, yeah, they get you.
Yeah.
So, Yusuf, go ahead and go back to the other two things that you were talking about, this violence issue, young people and violence. Here in North Minneapolis, I think last week, we had a murder on Glendale and Broadway, and then one within hours, I think, or the next day on Glenwood Avenue that council member Ellison suggested might have been associated with the first. There was also an incident, it might have been one of these two, where a child was nearly hit or could have been hit. Then there was an event in South Minneapolis where another life was lost over on Lake Street in Chicago. And it just reinforces this idea that people feel it's very, very, very dangerous to live in our community right now. And the same is happening in St. Paul where you are. I'm in North Minneapolis, but you're in the same situation. And what's the community saying? What's being discussed on the ground level?
Well, there's a lot of anxiety, Al, because on the one hand, people can't understand it. Two, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of fear. Anytime people are confronted by the unknown, they're fearful and they tend to retreat. So people are keeping their kids at home. They're not allowing them to ride their bicycles even around the block. And there's been a lot of conversation in the faith-based community. I know you have an initiative called, is it 21 Days Over North? And the situation is so dire that the governor, Tim Walz, has set aside $15 million for public safety. And there was a meeting held with some members of the North Minneapolis African American community with regard to obtaining funding for an initiative that they want to launch to try and stem this. In St. Paul, we have an organization called the Truce Center, TRUCE, that does a lot of work with young people. And in concert with the NAACP, we have a back to school program that provides free backpacks, free supplies, a free haircut for young boys and young girls. And we're throwing in a chance to have your name drawn to get a free computer to try and encourage young people to participate. And the state also received almost $2 billion in ARP funding, COVID funding.
Mhm.
And within that context, there's money to address public safety, to address COVID issues. There's a small business component for small businesses that were harmed in their ability to remain open by COVID-19. There are two educational components. One deals with not allowing the gap between students of color and middle-class white students to grow any larger. And the other is to ensure that marginalized students are fully engaged when they go back to school, whether it's online or in person after Labor Day. And they've opened this up through the Minnesota Department of Education, the Department of Energy and Economic Development. DEED is the one receiving proposals for small businesses and for economic development. So we've been trying to get the word out to people that funding is available, the $15 million pot the governor has for public safety, an umbrella beneath which all of the, I don't want to say anti-gang, but the anti-violence
Mhm.
and public safety initiatives could land, and where real dollars are now available. We had a conference call with the governor's staff. There are now 6 chapters of the NAACP throughout Minnesota: Minneapolis, St. Paul, Duluth, St. Cloud, Rochester, and the newest chapter in Mankato, Minnesota. And we had representatives from all 6 chapters who were gathering the information and are now in the process of disseminating it among NAACP members and others in the African American community to try and tap into these resources to begin to address, whether it's a church, whether it's a group of mom and pops who can find a 501c3 tax exempt sponsor to serve as their fiscal sponsor, or whether it's, the Urban League or whatever organization that is already tax exempt that happens to exist, to go ahead and get in this pipeline and get in line for some of this funding so that we can begin to address some of these young people, because the kids not only feel indestructible and immortal, but they got nothing to lose, and there's no worse person to confront than my grandmother used to say, boy, whatever you do, never get in a fight with an ugly man because he got nothing to lose. And that's true for a lot of these young street people who feel that they have nothing to lose, nowhere to go, nothing to look forward to, okay, and are ready to die at the drop of a hat or to take someone else's life, and if we can't begin at home with our own and then branch out to the nephews, the nieces, the cousins, the relatives, the in-laws, and work our way around the block and around the community, the parents have to assume some of that responsibility. And a lot of that falls on the shoulders of Black men, okay? Because we tend to love our sons and raise our daughters, okay? And there's a fundamental contradiction there, because we give our daughters everything to equip them to be self-sufficient, to be proud, long-term assets in our communities. And we sort of push our sons out there and tell them, sow your oats and have a good time and, try to stay out of jail and, behave yourself. If not, at least be careful, whatever that is, okay?
Yeah, especially when the father is not around.
Absolutely.
When he's not in the home, the mother, that motherly instinct just pervades for boys. And being a coach of young children, I have seen mothers have to be held back when their kids fall on the basketball court or fall on the soccer field. They have to be held back and let the boy grow up.
But would you agree? Would you agree, Kamal, that we tend to place more protections around our daughters than around our sons?
Oh, no question about that. But one of the things that Frantz Fanon said in Wretched of the Earth is that when you have a community that has been dispossessed, like the African American community, they turn inward. They turn on themselves. They take the aggression out on themselves. So this is nothing new. I mean, he was writing about Algeria, back in the 50s. And it was the same kind of phenomena. And then you put on top of that a system where guns are readily available.
Sure.
It's just
guns, drugs,
Yeah.
Frantz Fanon also said that each generation must, out of relative obscurity, discover its mission and either fulfill it or betray it. And at no important time for us to honor that advice than today, because there's something called cross-generational leakage. And what happens from one generation in our community to the next, there are certain aspects of character, history, legacy, culture that somehow don't make it intact to successive generations, and they're less well equipped to become self-sufficient and to become assets in our community instead of liabilities. It's TV and it's gangster rap and it's peer pressure, and having been out of school for a year, they turn on their internet, log into their class, and then they go eat breakfast or go watch cartoons on the TV. And as long as they're logged in, they're considered to be occupying seat time. Okay. And so we say we're not going to fail anybody. And when they go back to school in the fall, they're going to need tutoring. They're going to need a lot of support in order not to fall further behind and fall through the cracks. Immense support. They were in bad enough shape before the pandemic came along. Now, there are a lot of one-way tickets being handed out to correctional facilities, and our kids are going younger and younger, and they're staying longer and longer because they're getting longer sentences, and that's destroying a lot of African-American families.
I want to come back to this in a minute, but I noticed that our friend, one of my editors, Carmen Robles, is monitoring the program on Facebook or on YouTube, and she says hi to you, Yusef, number one, and also put in this comment, yikes, and people want guns at the state fair. Background on that. There's a group asking that the open carry laws apply to the Minnesota State Fair. State Fair is coming up in a couple of weeks, goes through Labor Day weekend, Kamal. Hundreds of thousands of people will be at the State Fair. And so one group is asking that they don't make, that they honor the right to carry weapons. What do you think? What do you make of that, Yusef?
We get 1 million people every year that go to the Minnesota State Fair. And for the life of me, if you've got law enforcement at the State Fair from the sheriffs and other Ramsey County Sheriff and other law enforcement agencies, why would you need to take your gun to the State Fair to buy a foot-long hot dog and put your kids on the Whirly Whirl or wherever they want to go, or your grandkids? It's totally unnecessary. And they're trying to say that the State Fair and the State Agricultural Department, as a municipality of the state, has no authority to impose a gun ban. Okay. And it's just absolutely defies any kind of logic or common sense whatsoever, Al and Kamal, that, here you're going to have, and we get more than 100,000 people a day. And it's hard not to be able to raise your elbows and touch people on either side, and we got these rap and R&B and national black acts. So you get a lot of the young people, and
you got a lot of beer.
A lot of beer.
Yeah.
And the last thing we need are for people wandering around with guns, and somebody steps on somebody's toe, and a shouting match becomes a pushing match, becomes a shooting match. And, it's hard not to shoot innocent people if you pull out a gun and start firing, given how compact and dense the crowd is all over the fairgrounds, with 100,000 people there every day. But I hope that the courts prevail and that the lawsuit will be thrown out. They have the advantage of being simple and even to some people sounding correct, but they have the disadvantage of being stupid and absolutely incorrect. So let's hope for the best. They want to put up the metal detectors at the entrance to check people as they come in, employees and visitors, to make sure that they're not carrying long blade knives or any kind of firearms whatsoever. And I think that they should do it.
Yeah,
because so and so from this set will meet so and so from that set, and the next thing you know, it'll be guns blazing.
Yeah, people spray.
Do either of you foresee a time when the Second Amendment will be restricted?
I do, and I got it from Dave Chappelle. He said every qualified African American adult needs to go downtown and file for a concealed carry permit right away. And once that happens, they'll quickly review the laws and begin to restrict, gun sales at, what do you call these things where you don't even need your driver's license, or
flea markets, the swap meets.
Yeah, swap meets, or they have them down at the armory, and they have them at flea markets, and you can buy AK-47s and bump stocks and all kinds of crazy stuff. And I think once all of us get our concealed carry permits, they'll revisit some of those potential restrictions. And I think Dave Chappelle more than a grain of truth in that. It's like D.C. will become a state when it becomes 51% white. So it's kind of like reverse logic. When 75% of us have concealed carry permits, then they'll start imposing background checks and 30 days and do some. You can't buy 100,000 rounds of ammunition and take it home.
Yeah, I have a son-in-law who's a gun enthusiast, and I went to a gun show with him this past spring. And I was thinking, man, I don't know if I want to be around all of these, white folks carrying guns. And much to my surprise, when I went into the gun show, it was 90% black. 90% black.
What age?
I would say mostly in the 40, 50-year-old age group, his age group. Now it was on the south side of Atlanta, which is the blackest area of Atlanta. But I was told that even if I would have gone on the north side of Atlanta, that blacks and whites are arming. And I don't know whether you guys saw on the national news where the black group gun guys went to Stone Mountain Park the week after the white guys went.
Did they call the police on them?
No, they didn't. I mean, I just see the country as being armed. I think there's probably more guns than people in the United States. Probably so.
Hey, and you want to hear something wild? You know that white couple that pulled their guns on the Black Lives Matter folks when they were marching by?
Right.
The judge dismissed the charges and let them go.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Said no harm, no foul. Didn't shoot anybody. So go back to your front yard and get your piece back out.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So Kamal, what do you think? I mean, what do you see? Do you see the Second Amendment being challenged, or out of whatever reason? What are your thoughts?
I believe that. Yes, just because it's because out of necessity, because the laws as they state, the background checks. I think that the National Rifle Association has just pushed too far.
Yeah,
and I believe they'll begin to chip away at it. Yeah, but it will be. I don't think in my lifetime but then again, in my lifetime, I didn't think I see a lot of things that I see.
Sure. Yeah. Well, Yusuf, like you were saying, there's been a lot of discussion in the community, in the Black community, about arming, and people that are reputable. I don't know if Chappelle meant it as a joke, but people like him are saying it makes sense to adopt a survivalist kind of mentality in the Black community, and not and for the idea, not that you're going to be defending against Black people, but there's a sense that there is an angst, a a tenseness in the white public that could easily give birth to, the stuff that we experienced at the birth of the Klan and at the end of Reconstruction, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
And so those people are sounding that alarm, saying that what Black people need to do is avail themselves of their right to bear arms and to be armed household by household. And so
Malcolm said it. Martin Luther King had a shotgun. When they blew up his house, Malcolm had one, went out on the sidewalk with it, and encouraged people, to protect their family, their loved ones. And I taught our daughter how to use a firearm. Our son, who was in the military, and it's a very important decision. But people need to use common sense. They need to be locked. They need to be kept where people can't just walk in and grab them and use them on somebody in the household. Most of the guns on the street were either purchased illegally at these swap meets and flea markets, or they were stolen in burglaries or these crash and grabs where they steal a car and then drive it in the front of a gun shop and then take as many weapons as they can in 3 minutes before the police come and get away. And a lot of people are buying them, and they're transporting them across the border to cartels in Mexico if they live in border states, or they're selling them on the streets for 10 times what they pay for them at these swap meets.
During my stay in Africa, and especially in Nigeria, there's nothing to walk down the street in Lagos and just see a big argument, just screaming, hollering, arms going all up in the air, but at least they wasn't armed back in the 90s. And arguments, not really fights, but a lot of heated debates and arguments. And I think that not being armed helps keep down the violence. Helps keep down the violence.
Well, look at England. Look at all of the European countries that might have only 5 or 6 firearm deaths per year. And here in the States, it's just astronomical. Keeps going up and up and up. And you'd think after all of these public school shootings, these elementary school shootings, Sandy Hook, and that, my God, was it Las Vegas where the guy went up in the hotel room and shot at a country western concert, and they had originally scheduled a rap concert, and something happened, and they had to either cancel or postpone it, and they booked the country western concert in that weekend. But that was supposed to be a rap concert or an R&B, hip hop concert, and this guy, killed, dozens of people from his hotel room, 500 yards away, just aiming it out the window and loading and firing, and had to bump stops and turned his AK-47s into automatic weapons. I think that if they are going to restrict gun purchases, they're going to have to start with the assault rifles, because there's no real justification, target enthusiast or not, for having a weapon of war, which is what the AK-47s, the assault rifles, the Russian sniper rifles, that's all they are, weapons of war. And you don't need a long gun to defend yourself in your home. It's hard to say I have to have an assault weapon to defend my wife and family, because in close quarters, it's a liability. But I think getting rid of, we did have a ban on AK-47s 20 years ago, and then it expired, and they didn't have the guts to reenact it.
Right.
But that's going to have to be an important part of the question.
Jeff Sykes is writing online, and earlier he said you need to invest in the importance of being kind. And I can't understand the rest of what he said, but he said, get generation ignoration. I'm not sure what that means. So I sent him a note back saying, say more. Jeff Sykes, thank you for your comment. And I'm presuming that Jeff Sykes is part of my family. My family is the Sykes family line on my mother's side, and there's a gazillion of us around the country. Jeff, thank you for watching and tuning in, and thank you for the comment. But I'm asking you to join in and explain more what you mean. And so both Yusef, you and Kamal used France Fanon, and Yusef, you ended with this idea of the obligation of generations to prove themselves worthy or to betray the trust that each of us has to experience. I think that's so important a question, and I want us to begin that conversation right now. All of us are the same age. I think we're all about 72 or 73. And one of the things that I wanted to do and want to do and will do is over a period of time, collect a bunch of conversations from our age group. I wonder if we look back at when we were 5 years old and 7 years old, how the world looked to us at that time, and what we believed the world would hold for us. As we matured from 5 to 9 to 12, what we began to believe would be opportunity and ultimately mission. And I'm going to ask you guys to both reflect on that. Looking at our generation, those of us born, between say 46 and 48. I think that I'm born in 47. That might capture all of us, I think. And so how did the world look to you as a child, Yusef, in your kindergarten and third and fourth grade? What were your dreams?
Well, first of all, we grew up in a bubble because of segregation. And all the black lawyers, the black doctors, the dentists, the pharmacists, the insurance salesmen, everybody lived on the block or within a block or two. And segregated housing meant that our community was united. Everybody knew everybody. If you put bottles on a fence and threw rocks at them, somebody's grandma would stick her head out the window, put her hands on her hips and say, "Boy, if you don't cut that mess out, I'm coming out there and whoop your behind. And I'm going to call your mama and your grandmama, and you're going to get another whooping when you go home." And we would say, "Oh, please, don't call my mother, my grandmother. The devil made me do it. It'll never happen again. I promise." And we would get on up the alley or on up the street because we were in this protective bubble. And everybody knew everybody. Everybody looked out for everybody. It was truly the extended family. Okay. Now, one of the first heartaches that I had was realizing that not everybody had the same educational opportunities, okay? Because in the fourth grade, we were expected to be on a 12th grade reading level. I went to a black Catholic school, St. Peter Claver, and we had black nuns. And I never had a white teacher until I got into high school. So we had to read Carter G. Woodson, and we had to read Booker T. Washington, and we had to read, serious black history from like the third grade on. As quick as you could read, they started putting them books in our hands, and we had to memorize them. And we recognized that not everybody had the same access to resources as we did, that there were some kids who couldn't read, couldn't write, couldn't spell. We saw poverty firsthand. We were so poor we couldn't afford to go window shopping, but we didn't know it because everybody looked out for everybody. And if you were at your friend's house and it was dinner time, their mama or their grandma said, "Boy, pull up a chair, come and join us," and you ate with them. And if they were at your house, they ate with you. It just meant you got 1/6 of a portion instead of 1/5, but everybody at the table ate. And we had hopes for a brighter future, for families being together. We lived in a duplex. My grandmother and my uncle lived upstairs. We lived downstairs. My father left when I was 2. So my mother worked, she'd leave before the sun came up and come home long after it went down. God bless her. And she devoted her life to us kids, and I owe everything that I am to them black nuns at St. Peter Claver and them black women in the house where I grew up who promised me that I was going to be a credit to the race or I was going to carry a lot of scars. Okay? And if I didn't say yes, ma'am, or no, sir, my grandmother had a hickory stick, and I felt that bad boy on any occasion when I forgot. you know, to say good afternoon, how are you? Yes, ma'am. No, sir. And it's just the way that we were brought up. Today I see senior citizens walk down the street, and if there's a group of young black kids coming, with their pants hanging off their butt, and I got to depart for a minute because a lot of kids think that comes from BET, or that's the gangster style. You know what it's called? It's called sagging. Okay, SAGGIN. Now do it in your mind and ask yourself, what does that spell backwards? SAGGINNIGGAS. Okay. And I spent about 40 years volunteering in the prisons. And when the brother ran out of money in the canteen, they couldn't wear belts because they were afraid they would wrap around their fist or slap somebody with the buckle or wrap it around their neck and, hang themselves. When the brother ran out of money in the canteen, he would pull his pants down, halfway off his butt. And they used to call them choosy lovers. And it meant put a couple dollars in my canteen and, I'll be your slave boy tonight. Okay. And I tell these young people, there's a lot of ex-felons out here in these dark alleys at night. You need to be real careful about where you wear your pants because somebody might get homesick and take advantage of you. But we really came up, protected, sheltered. And when I look back, Frank Alsop, Stuhler, Dolly, all of the elderly people in our community who kept us in line, who taught us, who advised us, who guided us, Harry Davis, a lot of people, man, who refused to allow us to go astray. So everything I am, I owe to those generations who put me on their shoulders and said, go on and get you a good education. And once you get it, bring it right back where you came from and invest it in the Black community. And so, Yusuf means a person seeking wisdom to benefit others. It's from the Yoruba language. And I could not think of a higher honor or service for my life because Dr. King said, and I'll shut up, anybody can be a leader because anybody can be of service to the community. So I have always considered myself a servant leader, and I have considered the people that I worked with my coworkers rather than my subordinates or my betters, and that's the kind of upbringing that I got from Black women in large part and from other Black men who became my surrogate father. And I owe everything that I am or ever was or may be to the character, the legacy, the history, the advice, the guidance, and the counsel that they gave me. And anytime anybody asks me, I try to give it back. I think that's the purest act of love possible. Okay. And I think it's revolutionary. Kamal, go ahead, bro.
Well, before you do, think about this, and we'll come back to this, Yusuf. Just so I want you to articulate how then you feel you and we have met the obligation described by Fanon, the obligation of our generation. And Kamal and I grew up about one block from each other. Kamal on 29th Street, Kansas City. Kamal on 29th and me on 28th. And went to school together. So we got a history. But Kamal, how did the world look to you and to me back when we were kids?
Well, Yusuf, I could almost say ditto. I could almost say ditto. Same thing. My mom was we were poor. My mother was a seamstress.
Couldn't even pay attention, right?
She was a seamstress, and like your mom, I remember watching my mother catch a bus before the sun comes up, and then coming home after the sun went down. Yeah. And I remember her a paycheck that she received. I looked at the stub, and this must have been around 1960. So I was probably about 12 years old then, and it was $39. So we didn't have a lot of money, but I was fortunate. I didn't go to the Catholic school, but because of the segregation, I was educated. I was educated with people who came from solid families, like Al. You know, I remember his dad. We called him Big Al. His dad was Big Al, and the Powells, and the Woods, Brenda Lau. Those were solid families that lived right in the neighborhood with me, within blocks of me. So even though I came from a single parent family, I saw what a family could be and should be. And when I went to school, I wasn't segregated out. I went to school with the lawyer's sons, the doctor's sons, and daughters, and got a chance to become very close to them. And so in going to their homes, I got to see what a family should be. I think for me, I thought, and my wife used to get on me, I thought everyone was good. I thought people were basically good. And even during the civil rights struggle, which my mother was a big part of, I thought that once it was shown what segregation and what discrimination did, that it would be wiped away, and that, that the world would be good. And it was only, I guess, probably after college, and it really probably after law school, when I realized that this is an ongoing battle, that the forces that we face are generational, and they go back centuries, and that we're going to have to just be on it, and our children are going to have to be on it, and have to be educated, as you say, Franz Fanon. One of the things that still bothers me is that we don't have a what do you call it when the boys turn 13 and they have to go
rites of passage.
Rite of passage.
Rites of passage.
Mm-hmm.
For the masses of our kids. My kids go through it because of the organizations that I'm in, but the masses really need to go through it. The boys really need to go through that, so that we will have a continuity, that they will understand what's expected of them. Right now, I see that there's just a huge gulf between the poorest blacks and the middle class blacks.
Yeah.
A huge gulf, and the value systems. You hear it. When you run into it and you hear the value systems and get over any kind of way you can get over. It's okay to steal, or
you see it on TV and in a movie.
It's. I don't know how to bridge that gap. But to answer your question now, I grew up thinking that people were good, and that as soon as we got this civil rights struggle won, that life would be great, America would be the greatest thing, And it took me a while. It took me to become a lawyer, and I remember the first time I handled a criminal case, and understood what the criminal justice system was and what it was intended to do. Yeah. And I ended up in jail. Myself and Sentwali ended up in jail trying to defend the guy. But the judge just told us, you don't have to do nothing. Just stand there. We'll dispense justice. Yeah. And so that's when I began to really unpeel the onion and see what we were up against.
Kamal, did you go to Atlanta when we were in 6th grade for the NAACP annual convention? Because we went down there, Bernard and Burnell and I.
Yeah, I remember you guys went.
Kansas City went down for the youth convention. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you were there or not.
No, I wasn't.
I remember, and I want to test my memory on this. My memory of it is that we did protesting in downtown Atlanta because our delegation was refused accommodations at downtown hotels. And wow. I remember us outside of our convention doing a thing where we were carrying placards. And it seems that there were others protesting us at the same time, including a socialist or Nazi party that were in the Nazi paraphernalia. And if memory serves me correctly, and I could be making this up, there were Klans people there as well, protesting the presence of Black people and the presence of the NAACP convention being held there in Atlanta.
How dare you?
Yeah, yeah. But you did, did you do anything with Fairyland Park? Did you?
Yes, I was
that
at
out?
that. Yeah, I
We
did that.
boycotted that. I think we just decided
Yeah.
not to go. Yeah.
Yeah, in CORE. My mom was in CORE, and I was a member of CORE.
Okay.
Not the NAACP. You guys, I think y'all went to St. Stephen's. That's how y'all got
The Powers did. Yeah, I didn't.
into
But
NAACP.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So,
Interesting.
yeah.
So the question then, Yusef and Kamal, is how have we handled the obligation, and have we individually, personally handled it in a way that we can say to ourselves and our children, we did what was expected, we met and exceeded the expectation, and then has our generation met its obligation from your point of view? And I say that thinking that it's not over, that we still, in my mind, are fairly young men at the onset of our 70s here, and we still have work to do. I say that everything we've done up to now, Kamal, has been practice for the work that is about to unfold.
Yeah.
So that's Al McFarlane's take on it. What do
My
you think?
my wife would say that I've gone above and beyond. But for me, I would say that I've tried, but I'm not satisfied. I'm not satisfied with my effort or my results.
Okay.
You remember Dr. John H. Wells? Dr. John H. Wells was a general practitioner in Kansas City, Missouri, and he and my mom were tight. We were both in CORE, and after I got out of law school, and I was they were calling me the ghetto lawyer. I was in Dr. Wells's office, and he put his hand on my shoulder, and he said, I know you, I know your family, and let me tell you, you got to take care of yourself and your family. I know, where your heart is, but you've got to take care of yourself and your family, and he said things will work out. And that was the beginning of my not getting involved in everything, and pulling back, and coming to the conclusion that if I can take care of my family and the people within my sphere of influence, my children's friends and their family, then I've done something. And I still, I do basic stuff like, man, I'm organizing a community cleanup for October. Just knocking on the going door to door and saying, we're gonna clean this place up. Come up October is gonna be the first weekend in October. We're gonna have a community cleanup. So that's the kind of stuff I feel as though.
Good for you, brother.
I feel as though after that, when they see it clean, maybe they'll resist throwing stuff out of the car, that kind of thing.
Yusef, go ahead.
That's the question I ask myself every day, Al. You and I got married about the same time, and I have been with the same Black woman for 52 years. Our daughter has 3 degrees and is working on completing her PhD. She's children's mental health for the county and has her own private therapy practice, which is why I can't rub 2 nickels together in my pockets. But our son works for a major multinational corporation in IT and the computer programming and coding. But our son is 52. And I asked him one day, I said, what do you remember most about growing up? And he said, Dad, I remember that all the other kids' fathers was taking them to football games and the movies and fishing, and you were always going to the prison or to some community meeting or doing a radio or a TV program. And I said, oh, please don't twist the knife, son. He was being brutally honest with me. So, you can't do the community business and do your personal family business at the same time. And I tried my best to do the balancing act. And I encourage people to judge me by my social practice. You know, I've served on 100 nonprofit boards of directors or more. You know, I've volunteered for every organization in the community at some point in my life. I've given. My family has given generously to Black causes and organizations serving African American people. I volunteered for 40 years in the prisons. I taught college courses there. I was the external sponsor in the men's and women's prisons when maybe I should have been taking my son to football games or to movies or something. I don't know. You know, I mean, at the time, I tried to convince my wife and children that if it wasn't for them, I'd still be Charlie Anderson. I wouldn't be Yusuf Mjadi, okay? And I wouldn't be out there trying to make the community a better place than the one that we were born into. So at some point, you know, there's a difference between decisions and choices. The word decide has the same suffix as suicide, genocide, pesticide, homicide, fratricide. All those words are fatal and non-negotiable, okay? And when you decide something, you eliminate your options and alternatives. In contrast, the best choices are the most well-informed, okay? And when you make an informed choice, your options and alternatives remain intact. So I tried to apply myself where I felt I could do the best good for African people, okay? And I tried to leave my options and alternatives intact. But when you're at the prison, you ain't at the football game or the movies or fishing, you know? Yeah. And when the brothers would call at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and say they hung somebody, they're beating somebody to death, we need you right away. Me, Spike, Katie, you know, there were a handful of us, would get on the highway and drive an hour or a half hour. I was the external sponsor at the federal prison up in Sandstone, and J. Edgar Hoover sent a telegram and said, if this useless Magugio and this Cambone Camara ever set foot on a federal reservation again, they are to be apprehended and kept indefinitely. You know,
a personal invitation, huh? Wow.
We got kicked out of the federal prison for going up there, and the revolutionary stuff we were doing. We would take the Black nurses, the Black doctors, the Black educators, you know, mixed blood, penumbra. We would take the Black theater group, and we would try and go up there and keep the connections intact, because when they got out of prison, they were coming right back to the hood, and we wanted them to come back as assets rather than liabilities. So every Sunday night, me and Cambone would drive 180 miles round trip to the federal prison and be with these brothers, you know, and I mean, it was like homecoming, because the brothers I grew up with, I graduated from grade school, junior high, senior high, you know, first 2 years in college. It seemed like they was all there. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I didn't have anything better to do. At least I didn't feel I did or could. So I hope that I have made a very small contribution to improving the quality of life for the current generation and for those who succeed us. And you just have to judge me by my social practice. And I hope that my son will forgive me for the times when we weren't at the football game or fishing or at the movies or doing the thing that all the other fathers on the block was doing with their kids. And, you know, so I weigh that every day, and it's heavy on my heart and on my mind. But when I look at what our kids have done, and as I said, the fact that I've been with this same woman for 52 years, I ain't got time to break in another one. Okay. So I'm going to be here for a while, and I'm going to do my best. But that's all. You know, people say, what are you doing? You know, I say my very best. That's all I can do. My very best. Wherever I'm at, whatever I'm doing, do my very best. And, you know, hope it makes somebody else's life just a little bit brighter, including my own. Because, you know, I benefited from it. It was personally rewarding. And as I said, I didn't have anything better to do. Okay.
This has been a wonderful 1-hour conversation. Brothers, I thank you so very much for the candor and for the vision and for the storytelling, creating the narrative. I'm Al McFarlane. This is Conversations with Al McFarlane. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, Al. Be safe, Kamal.
Thank you. Same to you. Man, me and you yourself, I think
we're twins.
I think, yeah, we're twins, man. I said, man.
Brothers by another mother.
Exactly. Look forward to seeing you.
And Al. Let's hear some sounds of blackness.
And I'm waiting on Kelvin to fire the music up. So Kelvin, if you're there, that's your cue.
Whatever you choose, Calvin.
All right, guys. So what happens sometimes is that young Kelvin Curia, who does engineering, his equipment will either freeze up on him or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where we are now. But listen, let's just sign off, and we'll see you next time. Okay.
Okay.
Look forward to it.
All right.
Take care.
Take care, brother.
Bye bye.